Coming up on today's Locked On Senators, it's another critical divisional matchup. Matthew Tkachuk and the Florida Panthers in town to take on the Senators.
Before we look ahead, we're going to look back at the game against the New York Islanders and try to figure out what went wrong.
I would call off sides on that, but I have to wait 30 seconds before I do. We'll get into all that and more. This is the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 925 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. You can find social media at Sens Central on Twitter, lockedon.senators on Instagram. The show is free and available on all podcast platforms, including on YouTube, where a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Shout out to the citizens. We've reached the 7,000 subscriber threshold. Let's keep that rolling up to 10K. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Today is Monday, November 27th, and here we are, Pilsy, the fourth line, once again, kicking off another show.
We can't have the fourth line starting any more games, especially Ross. Like, this team had almost a week off. Like, the first line guys should be ready to roll. What are we doing? Putting the fourth line out to start the game.
2 weeks since their last game at the CTC. Think about it. You know, they play the intro video. You're getting excited. They're playing the Annie Murphy video. You're getting excited. And now, starting for your Ottawa Senators, number 49, Rourke Chartier. Woo! The crowd goes crazy. No disrespect to Rourke Chartier, but you want to hear Tim Stützle's name. You want to hear Brady Tkachuk's name. You want to let the crowd go Artem Zub. Let them pick it up. Like, it just felt like such a thud. And that's not even to look at it strategically, where you're line matching against Casey Cizikas, against Cal Clutterbuck, against Hudson Fasching. I had to ask you how to spell Hudson Fasching's name for the lineup charts when we did that on Friday. And we're line matching shift one, not only of the first period, Pilsy, but the second and the third.
Yeah, I don't know, Ross. If anything, like, if I saw the Islanders were starting that fourth line, I'd be like, sweet, let's get that top line out and get a quick cookie.
You should be a head coach in the NHL, Pilsy.
My name is officially in the hat. If the Senators want to call me, you know what? I'll relocate from Collingwood and I'll whip this team into shape. Let's go.
Okay, there are some serious qualms we do have, but I think, I know we're joking about it, but it really is.
No, this is a serious qualm. Not only that, Ross, they start the fourth line, they start the bottom D pair as well.
Like, what's the point of that? What do you think strategically that is? Because DJ Smith was asked, shout out our guy, Ian Mendez, said, hey, we noticed that. What's up with it? And he says, well, they like to forecheck. Doesn't that seem like it's so reactionary that it's like, we'll match you guys? It's never us as the Ottawa Senators organization taking the initiative to be like, no, this is what we want to do. You're going to have to match up to us. It's like, no, you do whatever you want, and we'll do our best to defend it, rather than like, let's push the pace, push the, way that the game's going to go. It just felt like such a missed opportunity. 2 weeks, the season ticket holders had to wait to hear a starting lineup at home. They had 2 of their games confiscated over to Sweden, and that's what they get for their first
sold
ship.
Over to Sweden.
Yeah, exactly. But anyways.
Yeah, I mean, you just should not be starting games out like that. That's such a Guy Boucher move. Like, okay, we're going to go out there. We're not going to try to win, but you know what we're going to do? We're going to try not to lose.
Yeah, and it almost seems like Anyways, no, it's a goofy move, and hopefully it's a lesson learned that they figure it out. Sean Tierney can stomp down there and show on his computer and be like, you want to put your best players on the ice more rather than less, especially at the start of the game. But the start of the game wasn't necessarily the issue against the New York Islanders. It was a whatever start. I thought the first decent chance was actually on Ottawa Senators' chance, and then the New York Islanders had not one, but two defensemen injured 2 shifts into the game. They missed the rest of the game. So the Islanders played with 4 defensemen all night. And the Senators afterwards, it was just, you know what? We didn't get bounces. Of course, Timmy said that. Of course, DJ said that. That's, I'm sure, what the theme in the room is. And sure, they didn't get a few bounces. It sucked. The one that went right off of Brandstrom and then goes right on a stick, it's in the back of your net. But you make your own bounces by having them puck in the right position. I'm not going to get into that, though. I'm going to get into the fact that after the game, they're like, yeah, we should have hit their defense more. We should have taken advantage of only 4D. Like, did you not know during the game that they were gone? Because they left pretty early. I knew here 1,000 kilometers away in Winnipeg watching on TV that the Islanders were short on the back end, and yet they didn't do anything. If anything, they let the Islanders get in front of more shots. The Senators had 30 shots blocked in that game. Credit to the Islanders. That's commitment to defense. They stood up for one another. But they could have had at least 6 or 7 more shots just on the power play if Josh Norris ever felt like shooting a puck ever again.
Yeah, again, the whole thing to that game is there's no excuse for not beating a team that has to run 4 defensemen for the majority of the game, almost the entire game.
What did they do their next game? How many goals did they score with 2 call-ups without those guys in the lineup? The Islanders, they must have won. Oh, they got shut out.
0 goals. But Ross, it was against a Stanley Cup contending team, the Philadelphia Flyers.
Right, of course. Who I'm pretty sure their goaltending's pretty good this year, though, right? Like, it's got to be pretty good. There's no way they're bottom of the league in goals against, too, are they?
No, well, they can't be lower than the Sharks. sorry to ruin a good joke with the stat, but
and the Wild and the Oilers. Those are the bottom 3 teams. Actually, the Flyers are a lot higher than I thought they'd be. They're actually in the top 10, but of course a shutout would help that as well. Anyways, the bottom line, you can't give up to a team that does not know how to score goals consistently. The New York Islanders, here's a stat, 30th in the league in goals for per game. That's per game, not overall goals, per game. 3rd last in the league. And Ottawa not only gives up 5 goals for the 6th time this year where they gave up 5 or more goals, they allowed 3 goals in 3 minutes, 35 seconds. The 4th goal was absolutely horrendous on Anton Forsberg. Short side, beat clean. He said it after the game. He's got to have that save. He needs to have a lot more saves because if you look at it from a goaltending perspective, goalies with at least 5 games played this year, he's got the worst save percentage in the National Hockey League. The worst. Not a single goalie is worse than him. Jack Campbell's in the minors right now and has a higher save percentage this year than Anton Forsberg.
Yeah, the struggles with Forsberg is really tough because, like, even Korpisalo, like, he's had good games, but, like, you can't have Korpisalo steal the games every single time he starts, and then when Forsberg's in, the team's playing scared, they're playing nervous, and Forsberg's not able to build that confidence up. I really thought that win against the Minnesota Wild in Sweden was going to be a huge turning point, Ross, but I guess that could be one of those things where, yeah, momentum's cool, but you don't get much momentum from a last game when it's 6 days ago in a different continent.
No, exactly. And I mean, I thought he actually played well in the first period, but things just kind of fell apart in the second for the whole team, and he was no exception to that. The stat here, though, it wasn't Philly as a team, but the only goalie who had a worse save percentage than Anton Forsberg this season was Samuel Ersson for Philly, and he's the guy that got the shutout for the Island against the Islanders the next game. So that's a nice little how are you right there for the Flyers. But all in all, just a very poor effort. I'm more upset now than I was on Friday in the postcast because it's just, you look at the schedule, you look at the standings, every other team is stacking up points. Ottawa's stacking up games in hand, but when you play those games, you cannot let them slip away. When we've talked about all these times where, like, the schedule's rude to the Senators, the schedule's this, that was the most winnable game ever. Yeah. 4 defensemen. You're either on the ice or off the ice. There's no in between. And you couldn't put enough pressure on them that Scott Mayfield played 26 minutes and they scored 5 goals. How many times the Islanders scored 5 goals this year? Can't be more than 2.
Can't be many. Yeah. And Ross, I was like, as soon as both those guys, those defensemen, go down in the first period, I was running over to FanDuel live betting the Sens. I was like, all right, they have been given this opportunity to succeed. They've got to take advantage of this. And that one came back to bite me.
The Islanders have scored 5 goals once this season, and it was against the Ottawa Senators.
Oh, true. God dang it.
They got a 5-4 win, but it was in a shootout. So 4 goals plus the shootout point. So that doesn't count. And they've scored 4 goals twice, Pilsy. And guess what? They lost both times. They scored 4 goals in the game. Every other game. So that's how many games total? 20 games. They've had 4 games where they score more than 3 goals. And once where they score more than 4. And that's against your Ottawa Senators. They get the win. A very winnable game slips away for the Ottawa Senators. Now, it's time to turn our attention to Florida. I've made my peace. I feel better. We've talked it out, Pilsy. But if I see the 4th line starting tonight, 7 o'clock against the Florida Panthers, to quote, like, take out rest as a weapon, this is literally how I feel about if the 4th line starts.
Rest as a weapon. If I hear that one more time, I'll go crazy.
I will go crazy, Pilsy. I can't see it. And the 4th line does have some changes. The whole lineup has been shifted. Practice to practice, game to game. We've got roster moves to tell you about. We've got Locked On players, key to victory. That's all coming up next. You're listening to Locked On Senators.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Collective. Guys, if you run a solo small business, you're an army of one, but you still need some help. You need a CPA, a bookkeeper, separate payroll solution, and more. Let Collective take care of the paperwork while you take care of business. If you're running a business of one, you're wearing so many hats. You're wearing a Sens hat, you're wearing a Bird Dogs hat, you got all the hats on. Well, you can start saving thousands of dollars and hours of your time by letting Collective handle your business paperwork. They say if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. But as a freelancer, there's always that extra dreaded paperwork that comes with whatever you love. With Collective, you can focus on what you love and let them focus on the paperwork. Collective is the #1 financial solution for freelancers, contractors, and self-employed entrepreneurs that lets you focus on your passion. Let Collective handle all the paperwork like compliance, taxes, bookkeeping, accounting, even payroll. So if you're not a math guy, don't worry. Collective is there for you. Join the thousands of solo entrepreneurs who have saved an average of $10,000 a year on taxes. So right now, Collective is offering 1 month free and no onboarding fee when you go to collective.com/lockedon and tell them Locked On NHL sent you. That's collective.com/lockedon NHL and tell them Locked On NHL sent you. Check it out today, guys. Collective.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Shawarma Palace. You know how much we love our friends at Shawarma Palace. Abbas and the whole team at Shawarma Palace do a phenomenal job. If you missed it last week, I love the comments on our episode with Abbas, Sens Central citizen, and the owner of Shawarma Palace, because people were really getting to see that this isn't just a company that wants to take over the shawarma world in Ottawa. They did that naturally with their delicious food, their portion size, and the way that they aren't going with the shrinkflation. They are making sure that your plate is always full at Shawarma Palace. No, they are also real community drivers here. They're supporting the Ottawa Senators. They're supporting us. They love the community of Ottawa. And make sure you're following them on social media, Shawarma Palace Ottawa. They're going to be doing a huge Christmas giveaway over on their Instagram. So make sure you're following them there, Shawarma Palace Ottawa. You can also see all the locations of Shawarma Palace. They started with their flagship store at Rideau Street, right by Augusta and Chapel. That's where I grew up going all the time. But if you want to go to one of their new locations as well, you can visit them at Bank and Hunt Club. You can visit them at Bank and Gladstone, right by Baseball Town over there. You can visit them in Orleans. They're also in the Saint Laurent Shopping Center and at the Carleton University Food Court. You can even order them online, Shawarma Palace, on Uber Eats exclusively. So go eat like a royal today. Go eat at Shawarma Palace. All right, Pilsy. It is a Senators game day, Monday, November 27th, and I've gotten everything I needed to get off my chest. Do you have anything else from Friday's game before we really turn the page here and claw away at the Cats?
No, at this point, Ross, we've hashed it out with the postcast with segment 1. We're on to the Florida Panthers.
We are on to the Florida Panthers, a team that I watched their full game up against the Winnipeg Jets, and the Jets bullied the Florida Panthers. Yeah, they got great goaltending from Connor Hellebuck. Ottawa could use a really solid performance in goal. Hopefully, Joonas Korpisalo is good to go. Before we get into the game, actually, now that I say Korpisalo, hopefully he's good to go, let's touch on the roster moves that were made on Sunday evening. Both Mads Sogaard and Roby Jarventie were sent back to Belleville. Now, we had the discussion on Thursday or Friday where we're like, hey, Roby's time on ice is going down. His confidence level's waning. He's taken a couple stick penalties. Is it time to get him down despite the fact that Ridley Gregg nor Mark Kastelik are ready to come back in the lineup? You were saying, you know what? Is Matthew Highmore comfortable playing center at the NHL level? I think we got our answer.
Or we're about to find out. Like, who knows, right? But I think it was a good move to send Jarventie down. I think I speak for everyone just saying he wasn't really doing a whole lot here, unfortunately.
He had that push right at the start, that like adrenaline boost. His first couple of games I thought were good, but the last 4 or 5, it just felt like he was out of rhythm.
Yeah, it didn't seem like he could kind of keep up as a third line center. He wasn't really helping out his line mates much. Like it just wasn't working. And I think, you know what? Belleville's a team. They could use a guy like Roby Jarventie, have him come down, hopefully help that team out, boost morale, and hopefully get his confidence back up too. I mean, I shouldn't say that Jarventie's confidence is down. I don't know that, but it just didn't seem like he was playing his game out there.
No, he really wasn't. And he was -5 in his last, -4 in his last 3 games up in Ottawa. And his ice time, like 7 minutes and 4 seconds, exactly the same ice time in each of the last 2 games. Didn't win a face-off either. And when you're a bottom 6 guy, that's the one thing. And I know Rourke Chartier, he's kind of like the new Dylan Gambrell. He's kind of like, what have you done for me? But in reality, it's what he doesn't not do, if that even makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, he's not a liability out there. He just kind of, goes about his business. He's just I say this actually as a compliment comparatively. He's kind of a net zero player out there. He's not going to give you much, but he's also not going to give away. And at least he's winning faceoffs, which you can't say for Roby Jarventie either. So I like this move as well. The Belleville Sens need all the help they can get. They're finding new ways to lose every single game. They fell to Bridgeport. I always see it's like I'll refresh Twitter and it'll be like Crookshank scores, Belleville's up 3-2. And it'll be like 45 minutes ago. And then I click on it and they lose by 3 or they lose by 2. And it's just like, I'm struggling to figure out what's going on down there too. I mean, we just look at the box scores for the most part. I've caught a few games, but for the most part, we're going off of what we're hearing from, people around in and around the organization in the Bay of Quinte. And I don't know. That's a whole other episode, is figuring out what's going on in Belleville. But I do think Roby will help them down there. Otherwise, I mean, now there's no excuses, right? Because for the most part, outside of maybe JBD, who, I mean, he'll have to clear waivers at this point. JBD has to be an NHL defenseman. He's playing in the top 4 right now.
Yep.
But they pretty much have their team. Like, Highmore's the only call up right now, is he not? And McEwen, who went down and came back up.
Yeah. I would say Jarventie coming back down, and let's not forget Mads as well, right? Mads is having a really good season down there, so hopefully he can help string together a couple W's and keep the puck out of the net for Belleville. But yeah, it's been tough sledding. And Ross, DJ Smith said in his availability yesterday that he's waiting to hear from the doctors if Korpisalo can play. Now, sending Mads Sogaard down, that is a sign of kind of good faith that, okay, if you're not good enough to back up, if you're not going to, what am I trying to say here? I'm mixed up here. If you're not good enough to back up, then you're not going to play at all. So you're not going to have the opportunity to start. So hopefully this puts Korpisalo in opportunity where he can start. It'd be nice to give Forsberg a chance to bounce back, but like we've said, it's not worth the risk here.
After this game, there's another 3-day break, just like they need, right? They need time off. That's what we've been saying for the last 3 weeks. This team, they've been playing too much hockey. They need a little bit of time off, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, things come fast and furious then. They got the back-to-back Friday in Columbus. I mean, that's a revenge game for Joonas Korpisalo. He's playing that game.
He's got to. Yeah.
No, I know Forsberg was drafted by them too, but you're playing Korpisalo in that game. He was traded away from there last year. I'd imagine.
Actually true. Yeah.
I'd imagine he didn't play against them. He was traded to the Western Conference at the end of last season. I'm doubtful that he's played against Columbus since. But then So you're going next Saturday night in Ottawa against Seattle. That's when Anton Forsberg gets his chance to rebound. And if he doesn't win that game, you've got some serious problems because the games are going to come fast and furious against very good opponents, starting on Tuesday against the New York Rangers, then Thursday against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then they're playing in Detroit on Saturday. I'm already saying that's a must-win game against Detroit, who keeps winning and beating good teams. They won again today or yesterday on Sunday. They beat the Boston Bruins on Friday. They're finding ways to win. Ottawa's finding ways to lose. Here's how they're lined up for the game against the Florida Panthers. We expect, and I mean, DJ's changed the lines up so much, I don't even think he knows who's playing with who, but this is what the lines were at practice on Sunday. Tim Stützle between Brady Tkachuk and Claude Giroux. Josh Norris gets Mathieu Joseph and Drake Batherson on his wings. Rourke Chartier will play with Dominic Kubalik and Vladimir Tarasenko. Matthew Highmore is scheduled to play at center with Parker Kelly and Zach McEwen. On the back end, Jake Sanderson, Artem Zub, Jacob Chikrin with Jacob Bernard-Docker, Eric Brandstrom with Travis Hamonic. Again, no word on starting goalie. Pilsy, before I get your locked-on player, one note to share because the Senators have had a couple days of practice. Good to see Thomas Chabot wearing a regular colored jersey, another sign that he will return Friday against Columbus.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident Chabot will be back, Ross. I think the long break has been good and bad. I think it's good. He's going to be extra healthy. There's not going to be any kind of lingering, but bad in the sense, like, I would love to have Thomas Chabot in this game. Like, if he didn't have to wait an extra week because of all the time off, because LTIR goes by games, not time. So,
well, it goes by both. You have to be out 24 days and 10 games. Well, guess what? Because of the ridiculous gaps between schedule, that's what's holding him back. He's been out for more than 24 days,
right?
But he has to hit 10 games, so he'll be back Friday. Pilsy, you're locked on player to watch tonight.
I'm going to be locked on to Claude Giroux here. Claude is back on that line with Timmy and Brady. That's a line everyone was excited about at the start of the season. They had success, but then, I don't know, like, was it so much that they weren't successful anymore, or that they had to spread the wealth around that was the reason that they got broken up?
A bit of both. I think Mathieu Joseph and Ridley Gregg started clicking together, and you're like, you know what? Like, Joseph's going to play there. You're talking about the Brady line. Well, I don't know. Defensively, I think they left a bit to be desired. And at that point,
I think that was the thing. Defensively, the three of them, it just wasn't clicking that much. Now, Claude Giroux going up against old team. I mean, he had a cup of coffee with the Florida Panthers, but
he was disrespected by the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, the contract offer they gave him was not the same as what Ottawa offered.
1 year, $1 million.
Yeah, like basically being like, hey, you want to retire in Florida? Here you go. But I want to see Claude Giroux have a good game here, especially now that he's back with the big boys. And look, the Florida Panthers are a really good team in the faceoff dot, Ross, which we'll get to, but in turn helps their puck possession, where they're also one of the better teams in the league. So a good way to stifle this, and I guess I'm giving away too much of the keys to victory, but a good way to stifle this would be in the faceoff dot. It's very nice to start off possessing the puck off each draw. So Claude Giroux, obviously one of the key parts of winning faceoffs for the Sens team. So let's see a good night from our guy 28.
Claude Giroux had 3 points in 3 games against the Florida Panthers last season. Great call. I'm going with Drake Batherson as my locked-on player. Don't look now, but Drake Batherson is heating up. Over the last 6 games, Drake Batherson has managed to contribute 4 goals and 3 assists. Sorry, that's in his last 5 games. He's got 4 goals and 3 assists in his last 5 games. That's good for 7 points. At least now, it looks like he's given it on the defensive side. Before, earlier in the season, you could point out plays where you're like, hey, why didn't you close on this guy? Why didn't you stick check this guy? Why didn't you run this guy into the boards? Why are you a step behind? I feel like over the last handful of games, he's playing with more confidence. He's turning over pucks at the blue lines, and that's going to be a big key for me against Florida, because Florida plays heavy, and Drake Batherson, with his size and ability, should be one of the heavier forwards on the Senators to play against and tough to contain. Sometimes he makes it too easy on the opponents because he doesn't have that extra gear. But he seems to have found that. The offense is clicking now. He's still -1 in the last 5 games, Pilsy. I know some haters will point that out and say, look, he is doing some of his damage on the power play. 3 of those 7 points have come on the power play. That's still 4 even strength. if you're counting at home. But I'm hoping for a big night from Drake Batherson. If anything can get him going, it's Joseph on his wing, right? Like Joseph has just brought the best out of anyone he's played with this year, from Greg and Tarasenko. Then he moves up, and Timmy and Giroux are starting to play at their best. So that line I'm going to be really clued in on. I was between Batherson and Josh Norris because those two both need to get going for this team to be successful. And I shouldn't say get going for Drake. I just covered that the points are coming. But now, like, let's see him and Norris and get a second line cooking, because right now it's a one-line team offensively.
Yeah, I agree. I do think moving Joseph with Norris and Batherson, hopefully that gets the job done. And if it doesn't, there's no excuses. Like you mentioned it, Joseph has really elevated other players' games so far. Ross, before we move on, though, I do want to mention that third line really bothers me. I mean, I feel like you bring in two bona fide snipers like Tarasenko and Kubalik. They're new to the team. And what do? You give them the most defensive player on this entire roster in Rourke Chartier. Like, if you want to get those guys going, what if, like, they're looking at the lineup sheet being like, okay, two guys, two shoot first mentality guys, although Tarasenko's playmaking ability has been good so far. And we're playing with a guy that's like all defense, and he doesn't really kind of move the needle one way or another. Like, that's got to be disappointing if you're these two players. And then it's like, I almost feel like that line's kind of a waste. Like, that's just like no man's land there.
But how would you feel about that line if it's Shane Pinto in between those two? So
much better, Ross. And like,
how would you feel about that line if it was Ridley Gregg playing between those two?
So much better, Ross. That's the thing. And we don't want Rourke Chartier to be this year's Dylan Gambrell, and it's looking like that's going to happen. And the thing, too, is I hate to bring it up, but you look at a guy like Alex DeBrincat, bona fide sniper, brought in to do big things in Ottawa. What happens? Unfortunately, injuries happen, and he doesn't get to play with the type of centerman that is probably helpful for him. No offense to Shane Pinto, but as a second-line center, it wasn't exactly the best fit for DeBrincat, right? So I'm just worried that's going to happen again. You're going to kind of have two disgruntled guys that either you need to have big seasons just to help you out, just obviously, but also you want to convince them to sign long-term. One of two of these guys you probably want to keep around, or you want them to have good seasons. If this team and record continues to go down the drain, at least they have some trade value on the way out. So I don't know. This third line really bothers me, Ross. And I know, like, what else can you really do? Like, you're not about to bump Parker Kelly and Zach McEwen up to try to switch it around, but man, it's tough to look at.
It really is. You know what else is tough? The fact that we haven't heard yet. We're 27 minutes into the show, Pilsy, and we haven't mentioned Brady Tkachuk's playing his brother. Did you know that Matthew Tkachuk is Brady Tkachuk's brother? They play on different teams, both in the National Hockey League, and they're brothers.
That's wild.
That's wild. So we've given Brady Tkachuk as the Citizen Locked On player. We already saw that Keith Tkachuk, guest of the show, Keith Tkachuk and the whole family is in Ottawa for this game. So I'm looking forward to a big game for Brady Tkachuk. All jokes aside, I'm sure he gets up for this game a little bit extra. But the captain, despite scoring 10 goals this season, Pilsy, which leads the team, they've come in 5 games.
Yeah.
That's 11 games where he's got no goals, right? He's got 2 goals every time he's got one. He scores twice. He's basically the antithesis of the Sens power play, where they always score 1, but never more. So Brady Tkachuk has 2 goals in 5 games, 0 in the other 11. So hopefully this is another good game for the captain, Brady Tkachuk. What's going on the Florida Panthers side? Well, we mentioned they've got Matthew Tkachuk, but that's not all. There's some great players on that team. We'll preview the Florida side and some Sens keys to victory next. You're listening to Locked On Senators.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Sleeper. If you want to win 100 times your money, play daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app. There's so many ways that you can win, and to have a chance at winning big, you need to play daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper. As the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network, Sleeper is a top choice, not just for daily fantasy hockey, but all fantasy sports, daily fantasy. With Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests, and you can pick any different selection of players you want. It's all under your control. You can talk smack in the group chat. Let them know you're up for a big week. And what I love most, entries can be made in under a minute. Nice and quick. With studs like Brady Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk, Brandon Montour back in the mix for Florida, Jake Sanderson, Claude Giroux. You have so many players to choose from. You got to choose from stats like goals, assists, plus, minus, saves, and you can win big. 100 times payouts on sleepers. So start paying attention, Sens fans, and get your picks right so you can win big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleepers terms of use for details. Daily fantasy hockey only available in the States for now.
Today's episode is also brought to you by our good friends at the Glebe Central Pub. You can go visit the Glebe Central Pub in the heart of the Glebe at 779 Bank Street, and make sure you let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. What's great about the Glebe Central Pub? Yeah, the atmosphere is awesome. The food's great. I love the chicken Caesar wrap. Pilsy's more of a buffalo wrap guy. Also, what can you do better than wings, man? The Glebe Central Pub does it so great. Got the beer specials, everything going on, including the shuttle to and from Ottawa Senators games. We got a great call from the owners of Glebe Central Pub. Blair says, you know what? Lots of citizens are hopping on the bus. So be one with the citizens and go check out their website, glebecentralpub.com, and go to and from the CTC for the low price of just $17. And that leaves an hour and 15 minutes away from the game. So you're able to go to and from the CTC. The next bus leaves Saturday, December 2nd, $17. Make sure when you're buying, because you can buy game tickets on the website, there's a direct link. Scroll down and click right over the game that you want the shuttle for, where it says $17. The bus against Toronto, that's going to be rowdy. That's going to be a great time. $17. Make sure you get it right now and go visit the Glebe Central Pub, 779 Bank Street, and make sure you let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. All right, Pilsy, welcome back. It's Locked On Senators. It's a Monday. It's a game day, the only game day until Friday. So we need a win to get us through what will be a long week. Mark Mathott's already been itching to get back on the show, so we'll hopefully be able to line up a time that works for us this week. With Mark Mathot, we'll have a Sens Central citizen. Always a great vibe here at LOSP, where we are for fans, by fans. Pilsy, this Cats team, pretty good. You can see why they made it to the Stanley Cup final. I thought they'd have a long hangover based on the injuries and the manpower that took them into that run. We owe them stick taps, beating out the Leafs in the playoffs. We respect that, but they picked up right where they left off. They actually lost their first two games of the year, and then they picked up where they left off.
Yeah, Ross, other than Sparta Cat, not many cats that the Ottawa Senators like. DeBrincat, see you later.
Vasilevsky, the big cat.
True, yeah. Although Vasilevsky's numbers up against the Sens are not that great, but we don't want Vasilevsky. We don't. No,
they're getting back. Let the record show we do not want Vasilevsky, who is back, and the league's better with him back. But the Sens' playoff chances are not.
Yeah, yeah, Ross. You know, the one thing killing the Sens' playoffs chances, Vasilevsky coming back from injury. Dang, that ruins everything. And the Florida Panthers, you got to give them a lot of respect. They always play the Sens hard. But there's been some games that have gone both ways with this team. There's been barn burners both ways. So a lot of goals probably going to happen here. But this lineup, now that they've got their guys on the back end back from injury, Ross, say what you want, but this is actually a pretty deep lineup. Even with Sergei Bobrovsky's monster albatross contract, they're still able to have a pretty good lineup throughout their entire forward and decor.
Well, if you look, Bobrovsky, I mean, it's not as much of an albatross as it was before, because now at least he's stopping the puck and playing like a starting goalie. It's still 10 million, and 10 million is 10 million. But at least he's making saves. He wasn't doing that a couple of years ago. Up front, we expect Alexander Barkov to center Evan Rodriguez and Sam Reinhart. The second line is Sam Bennett with Carter Verhaeghe and Matthew Tkachuk. Anton Lundell will play with Eetu Luostarinen and Nick Cousins, the pride of Belleville, Ontario. And the fourth line is Kevin Stenlund with Jonah Gadjevich and Ryan the Lamborghini Lomberg. On the back end, it's Gustav Forsling with Aaron Ekblad. It's Nico Mikola with Brandon Montour. And then Oliver Ekman-Larsson will play with Dmitry Kulikov, and we expect Anthony Stolarz to play because why wouldn't a team play their backup against the Ottawa Senators?
Ross, I'm 99.9% sure that Stolarz will play, which the irony is I feel like almost every time I talk about a starting goalie for the other team, the coach gets wind of it and switches it up on me to make me look like a fool. But I'd be shocked if they do any other way here. Yeah, looking at this lineup, like last year, Ross, everyone was looking at the Florida Panthers, and after they trade Mackenzie Weegar and don't really get a defenseman back in return, everyone's like, oh, this decor is going to ruin the Florida Panthers. But now you look at it, and with the way Brandon Montour had a huge season, Ekblad come back from injury, I feel like Forsling kind of had his coming out party last season, and then OEL on a third pair is pretty decent. This team is not a weakness from the defense out. And Ross, I'll roll right into my lookout player. I've already mentioned him, Brandon Montour. Him and Ekblad have only been back for 4 games. No points for either of them yet, Ross. But I was looking at Montour's game logs, and he's logged over 20 minutes a night. So he's kind of back in the swing of things. I think maybe it'll just take him a while to get back to form. But I remember watching this guy throughout the playoffs, and he's like a forward out there. You never know when he's going to join the rush. You never know when he's going to sneak in and go from the point all the way to the slot and be an extra man there that this team already struggles with defensive structure and covering guys in front of the net. You got to watch out for Montour. He's sneaky. So number 62, my lookout player.
Yeah, very good call. And again, just returned from his off-season surgery. So he's a guy who you'd think would take some time to get back to form, but not the case. He looks great. That whole decor looks pretty exceptional on the ice, maybe less so on paper. If you're like, Dmitry Kulikov still plays, you're like, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, like I thought he got bought out, the richest buyout in Vancouver Canucks history, but he's slotted properly here in Florida and playing great. My lookout player, Sam Reinhart. You love when a guy is playing great in a contract year. Go get your money, Sam. But you know what scares me about Sam Reinhart? This guy has 25 points in 20 games this season, but only 1 assist in his last 4.
Yeah, I was going to say he's cooled off recently, Ross. That's what stopped me from highlighting him, but you got to watch out still.
But that's the thing. Is he just bubbling at the surface, waiting for another 4-point night, or is he really cooled off? So that's going to be my guy to watch. He got his bell rung in the last game. I told you to watch that fight against Brendan Dillon. He bit off more than he could chew. I mean, Brendan Dillon, 6'4", 230. And I mean, they probably know each other from BC. They're both maybe off-season training buddies. I know they're both BC guys. Maybe I'm putting 2 and 2 together a little further than it need be. But
they might have played together in Buffalo. Montour had a quick stop there.
Dillon didn't.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about Reinhart. Never mind.
No. But yeah. Brendan Dillon gave him, I think, 45 uppercuts, give or take, in that fight.
He was swinging those uppercuts around.
It was wild. So, hey, maybe that knocks some sense back into Sam Reinhart. But I'm going to be looking out for Sam Reinhart in tonight's game. Yeah,
that's definitely a guy to watch. And I mean, obviously, the low-hanging fruit is Matthew Tkachuk. And Matthew Tkachuk, Brady Tkachuk's brother.
That name sounds familiar.
Yeah, we love the Tkachuks here, except when the Ottawa Senators are playing against the Florida Panthers.
The keys to victory, Pillsy, lead us off with number 1.
Win the battles at both blue lines. I was taking a look at NHL Edge stats, Ross, and the Florida Panthers in the offensive zone and defensive zone are among the best teams in puck possession. But where they were below the 50th percentile in puck possession was the neutral zone. So I want to see the Sens winning those neutral zone battles, making it very hard for the Florida Panthers to go zone to zone. And look, you can only do so much up against a team that clearly has the structure. Paul Maurice, a very structured coach, that they're able to possess the puck well in both the offensive and defensive zone. But if you can win in the transition zone, in the neutral zone, that can go a long way here. So that's going to be the big thing for me looking out here.
And something to do with those battles at the blue line, I'm also counting clean zone exits and clean zone entry, something the Senators have very much struggled with. And a clean zone entry doesn't mean chip and chase it. It means get over the blue line with possession and make plays. Pillsy?
Number 2.
Nice. Thank you, our friend at Leams Martian. This has to do with possession as well. Like, I looked at it, Ross, and I thought with all these great possession numbers, the Panthers would score a lot of goals, but it's not so much that their shooting percentage is high. It's that they are comfortable holding on to the puck, cycling it around, using their depth and all kind of spread out talent throughout their lines to be able to just kind of, hey, sometimes offense is the best defense, right? And they're holding on to the puck. They're doing well. They're sixth in the league in Corsi percentage at 54.84. So this is a team that you're going to have to find a way to break up that zone time, that possession. And whether it's through stick checks, playing physical, using your speed to beat out those loose puck battles, all of those things the Senators are going to have to do. And I already mentioned it, so I won't dive into it again, but the face-off dot might be crucial in this game.
I'm also going to say this. That worries me because the Senators have had trouble with their defensive zone coverage when teams cycle the puck. They have trouble being like, hey, who's going to get this guy? So I'm going to be watching for the Sens defensive structure and seeing if they're able to withstand extended zone time without caving and giving away grade A opportunities.
And number 3.
Do not start the fourth line under any circumstances in the first, second, or third period.
And Ross, you forgot a big one, especially if this game goes to overtime. I don't want to see those guys out there Guy Boucher style. So let's make that clear too. And you know what? Just so we cover all our bases, don't start them as the 3 shooters in the shootout either. Let's make sure we're very clear here.
Very clear, please. No, just start the best players and end with the best players. And then sneak the fourth line guys in the mix when you're shorthanded mostly.
Yeah. Honestly, Ross, if this team was healthy, I'd be more inclined to say, hey, let's roll the lines here. Keep those top guys fresh. You got a good bottom 6. But unfortunately, with no Shane Pinto, no Ridley Gregg, no Mark Kaslick, this team's bottom 6 is not where it's supposed to be. So don't have your fourth line guys eating up ice time right off the bat. It's a wild move for me. Like you said, sneak them in 30 seconds left at the end of a period. Neutral zone draw, sneak them in there. Like that's the kind of thing that I think, unfortunately, the Ottawa Senators are, or at least DJ Smith last game was not really doing.
Yeah, and my final thoughts, and I want to get yours too, Pilsy, is face-off plays. Man, face-off plays still another issue. They give up the goal off the offensive zone draw where Josh Norris loses it. It's bang, bang in the back of the net. Then the neutral zone draw for the 4-1 goal. It's in the back of the net. Jacob Chicker makes an awful play to try to pinch in at center ice. Doesn't work. Like that, to me, is the most coachable part of hockey, is plays directly off of faceoffs. That's where they need to improve quite a bit here, because it's not just isolated to that Islanders game. It's all season long. There's a lot of goals that happen within 10 seconds of a lost faceoff.
Well, and Ross, I don't know about you, but obviously we've seen a lot of set faceoff plays work beautifully up against the Senators. I don't really notice the Sens setting those up that often. The Senators are actually among one of the better teams in faceoff win percentage. So you'd think if you're snapping them back that quickly, have a set play that you know you're going to do right off the bat and get the puck towards the net. It just seems like the Senators, once they win the draw, and sometimes this can be a good thing. Sometimes you want to win the draw, slow the game down, start cycling the puck. I get that. That's fine once in a while. But every couple face-offs, if you get a clean draw back to the D, snap it over and get a quick shot on net. Have some sort of set play. I'd like to see that more.
Yeah, love that. I've actually lied because now I got breaking news as a final thought. No, this is Sens Abroad, hashtag Sens Abroad, final thought. And I want to give credit because he was a great Ottawa Senator, wore a letter for this team for a couple of years. Connor Brown, as we're recording this late on Sunday night, has his first point since leaving Ottawa. How wild is that?
Yeah, I mean, he was injured very early with Washington, true.
4 games, no points with Washington, and then in his 14th game with the Edmonton Oilers gets an assist. So good on Connor Brown.
Yeah, he needs that. I honestly, Ross, when the Oilers were able to snag him for, $800K, I was like, this is going to be a game changer for them. But unfortunately, like a lot of other things in Edmonton, it hasn't been going well.
Yeah. Final thoughts on today's show, Pilsy? I know you saw Thomas Samara get first star today.
Oh, no, I didn't see that. Nice. The Bulldog.
Your guy. And not only that, he scored his first goal. He's killing it ever since the trade.
Yeah, that's been a great move. So love to hear that. But unfortunately, Ross, final thoughts for me is I am scared. I am so there's very little hype for me going into this game up against the Florida Panthers at home. Like, part of me is just like, scheduled loss. Let's focus on the Blue Jackets and Kraken. Like, that's where I'm at, honestly.
Stop. Okay, they got to give a good effort for the fans. That's what I'll say. And I'll also say, just to close off my point about Thomas Shamara, it's hammer time, according to the Brantford Bulldogs. They win 5-2. In 8 games since being traded, Hamara has 1 goal, 6 assists, 7 points in 8 games, and is plus 10. So a very, very good change of events after a big nothing burger with the Kitchener Rangers. But sometimes situations matter. Just ask Senators and their former goaltenders about the stats with and without the Sens. But hey,
look at Cam Talbot. Oh my God.
Tonight, another opportunity. Pilsy, I think we did a good job this episode because we said we were going to raise the bar, raise the standard, and we have to hold them to that. We're still diehard. That's the thing. Sometimes people are snapping back at me today at Sens Central on Twitter. I was tweeting out a couple stats that really kind of caught my attention that I didn't like. And I think people forget, like, there's nothing more that I would want than for the Sens to win and to just pump their tires all the time.
Yeah, that'd be sick. That'd be so cool.
The standard needs to be up here. 8-8, not good. Not great. Second last in the Eastern Conference right now. Games in hand. In games in hand, we trust. And one of those will be tonight. 7 o'clock puck drop. We will have the postcast right after the game. Join us to vent or vibe. For today, we say goodbye. Have a great one, Sens fans. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.